Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to Talent and Growth, and welcome back to a live webinar roundtable type thing, which we will also, of course, be putting out as a podcast. So thank you to the listeners who are catching up on that. And today we are talking about the all-important candidate experience. And we know, rightly so, over the last few years, this has become such a big piece on the agenda for talent acquisition teams, making sure that people coming through hiring processes have a great impression of you as a business, and come out hopefully wanting to work for you, whether they got the job or not. And there are lots of steps along that way to make sure that journey for them is a good one. And so we're going to talk about that today, and hopefully come up with some ideas around what we can all do to make our candidate experience a little bit better. So I'd like to introduce, or get my guests to introduce themselves. So Carmen, if you wouldn't mind just kicking off and telling us who you are and what you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Carmen, and I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager at Atom Learning. Atom Learning is an edtech company, and our mission is to democratize education. We use machine learning and a visually engaging tech platform to bring a fun, high quality, and personalized learning experience into every child's home, regardless of their background. To achieve our goal, we're combining exceptional teacher-made content with cutting-edge technology. Last year, we scaled up. So I personally joined Atom in September 2021. When I joined, we were around 70 employees, and now we are around 130. So you can imagine how much we learned in the past year in terms of candidate experience.
And I should point out that Carmen is so passionate about candidate experience that she is doing this from Lisbon on her holiday because she just couldn't miss it. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. Nuria, would you mind? Well, welcome back to our webinar series. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me again, Paul. So for those who didn't were attending the last time, so my name is Nuria. I'm Talent Acquisition Manager currently at Spaceleaf. So we're a full remote Polish American tech startup. So we're a CI/CD platform, very techie and SaaS product for developers. I've been working in recruitment for the past 8 years, mostly between London and Paris, where I'm based right now. And I have a mixed experience both in agency and in-house, mostly across different industries. And my main focus in the past years has been within the tech scene, mostly in startups around e-commerce, fintech, SaaS, recruiting international talent in corporate functions, and a little bit of tech, mostly across EMEA and the US regions.
Amazing. Thanks, Nuria. So we have Carmen in Lisbon, we've got Nuria in Paris, and of course we've got Lauren all the way from sunny Glasgow. How are you, Lauren? And could you give us a little intro?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. Yes, joining you from Glasgow, so not quite as exotic as my co-hosts. My name's Lauren. I'm People and Culture Manager for a digital startup called Flow. We have been scaling up as well, so lots of focus on the candidate experience. Before that role, I worked in agency recruitment for a couple of years, which I loved. Then I crossed over to the dark side and did internal recruitment, and my last couple of roles have now been much broader. So I've always believed that if you have a great company, great candidates will come and work there, as long as you obviously can nail that candidate experience as well. So now I look after all aspects of the employee experience, everything from recruitment, HR, learning development, reward, benefits, wellbeing and engagement. So definitely keeps me busy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. And Lauren, let's stay with you and kick off this then. So let's just ask you, first of all, what does good candidate experience mean to you? What's the fundamentals when you think of that?
So for me, there's two kind of key elements there. The first part is transparency. So I think that empowering the candidates to really understand what your process is, give them loads of signposts and all the information they need to be able to perform well and give a good impression at the interview. And the second part that I think sometimes we don't focus on so much is their comfort. So how can we ensure that our interview or recruitment process is designed around what's going to let them really feel comfortable and feel that they can, give themselves a great shot at getting the job, but also do so without some of the anxiety and some of the angst that can sometimes come with that recruitment process. So those two elements are always what I place a lot of focus on.
Absolutely. Thank you. What about you, Carmen?
I agree 100% with Lauren, and I think as well, it's really important to have like hiring managers alike and talent acquisition aligned. What I found in my career is that when a role is hard to fill, there is no role that is hard to fill. There's just like alignment is not there. So it's to have a talent acquisition and hiring managers align in terms of hard skills, what we're looking for in a candidate, but as well soft skills. For me, communication is key as well. So having the candidate keeping the candidate in the loop with what's happening, and give them time frame as well on when they can hear from us. I know that it's not always easy, like people go on holiday, something happens. I know that that's a possibility, but just keep the candidates informed. I think that's key for me.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point because I have delivered negative feedback before and it's not gone down so well, but very rarely, most of the time people just appreciate you coming back to them and they take it however it is. But not hearing something and people not coming back to you is often the worst thing. I actually did see a study around how it actually negatively affects people's mental health, just not hearing or being left in limbo. And there's a lot of data around that. But cool, thank you very much, Carmen. And Nuria, anything to add?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think like they raise very important points about communication and transparency and trying to keep a timeline. But for me, I mean, I think good candidate experience goes from like anything, like any interaction that a candidate or potential candidate will have. So like from running a diverse and inclusive ads, so any information they can find on the career website, and any interaction with anyone in the business they will have, starting from like talent acquisition to hiring managers, peer interviews, or if they happen like going to an office and meeting anyone in the front desk. So that is all like candidate experience. Of course, we are owners of this process, and we try to just like always like babysit them through all of it, but everyone is involved. So for me, we're all ambassadors and we all have to keep make it like our mission to keep a good candidate experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth noting that this is the responsibility of the whole business, and Neil needs to kind of filter through the whole way, right? It's all good. Talent acquisition can give a great experience, but then if it doesn't work with the hiring managers, then it's not going to work overall. And I was going to ask next, really, what if anyone had any examples of bad candidate experience? And I'll kick this off a little bit because I certainly gave plenty of people a bad experience when I was working on an agency side as a manager. And this is, we're talking 7 or 8 years ago, where the concept for me as a hirer was to make the person we were interviewing as uncomfortable as possible and see how they handled the pressure. And that was quite normal in agency. I don't know if I'd imagine it still happens at some agencies, but it was really looking to see how people would handle pressure and whether they would respond well to it. And if they didn't, then they weren't right for my business. Now, looking back on that, I think, God, I probably let a lot of good people, my cat's meowing at me, a lot of good people fall through there, not to mention probably gave people an unpleasant experience, which actually makes me feel quite bad. It's what I was taught, what I knew, and what I did, and I now see that actually that we really need to make sure we're giving people as good a platform as ever so they can be the best version of themselves. And different, different people need different things. So there's lots to talk about there. But has anyone got, Nuria, have you got an example of a bad candidate experience? Maybe you experienced yourself?
But I always say that in interviews, and it's true because I had a background in tourism and customer service. So I worked in hospitality for many years and it's a very, especially in Spain, when I started my career, it was a very just like short-term contract. So I was constantly interviewing until one day I just got fed up, especially after having like so horrible candidate experience. So I just did. So that was like actually the main reason why I became a recruiter, because after like experiencing that myself, I was like, well, I'm sure I can do better. It's not, you don't need to be like super trained. You just need to be human, actually. And I've been in the other end for some, I don't know how many interviews I've done in my life. So yeah, that was actually the main reason why I decided to become a recruiter. I did that when I moved to London about 8 years ago. So, and it was good that I had the opportunity to do it. But yeah, and obviously I'm human. I just last week, I was just feeling a bit under the weather. I was thinking like, what the hell was like this interview that I did? Sometimes we're human. I mean, some days, like your brain is completely spaced out, but I try to be honest with the candidates. And speaking of what you're saying, like setting a good environment. I always say like this is a call, be comfortable. And me too, is, like I just want this to be like a very chill conversation, especially when it's an intro call or a phone screening, and it's different when you do more like a thorough job for evaluating other skills. So yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people think that, like I let them down for some reasons, and I know that in the other hand I had like amazing candidates that were like super grateful after the experience they have with me. Sometimes we do speak with so many people, it's like it's difficult. You don't want to get like too attached, especially at the beginning, because you don't know how far that's going to go. And when it's getting narrow, you can allow yourself to like get more attached to this person. But yeah, at the beginning when you're starting and you just do like phone screens, I mean, you're like, yes, no, yes, no. And I know that a lot of candidates, even if you give them like feedback, they challenge you a lot. Of like, I know, but like, this is not only up to me. I'm just like, I'm the messenger. I try to put up a good word, but at the end, it's not up to me. So it's both ways.
Do you, in terms of delivering feedback, how do you usually communicate feedback? Let's say it's a negative, let's say it's a rejection for whatever reason, and does that change depending on the stage they've gone through?
Yeah, exactly. Depending how many stages and how many effort they'll have to. Let's say after my phone screen, I will probably send an email, because I might have like I don't know, like 30 calls every week. So I probably will send an email after like a hiring manager. If I have very detailed, I try to email. It's true that right now I don't have like a how you say it, work phone. So it's true that, but yeah, usually if they met the hiring manager, I like to give them a phone call and just deliver like the news. And then obviously, and then try to give them as many thorough details as I can. But yeah, email, let's say when it's just like early stage, maybe. Right now, how we do it is short call with me, short call with the hiring manager. Up at this stage, I would just send a rejection email, but like a personalized, customized one, not just like the generic one. And then further they go in the process, then I'll definitely give them a phone call.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. Lauren, any bad experiences for you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. But just a point on Nuria's comments there. So I've got a bit of a golden rule when it comes to giving feedback that isn't always feasible, right? But I try and do, if the candidate's just submitted a CV application, just done something kind of early stages, written context, the feedback I will then do in a similar format, so an email back or something like that. However, I do feel quite strongly that if a candidate's taken time out of their day to speak to someone, the feedback, where possible, should then also be verbal and a bit more, two-way dialogue. So just a point on that. But in terms of bad experiences, I'll give you a high-level overview. So I had a job once, and first stage was numerical and verbal reasoning. So if you're as bad at maths as I am, that already by itself is pretty tough. Then after that, I was asked to write 400 or 500 word essays in response to some questions. After that, it was a telephone screen. After that, it was a kind of panel style interview. And then there was a practical task. And then there was to work for half a day, paid, thankfully, for this role. And for various reasons, that process is quite intense. So I think for me, when we think about a bad experience, it's overkill. It's too many stages. It's so drawn out. It's a massive time commitment and effort commitment for a candidate. And unless it's, maybe someone's dream job, I don't feel like we should be asking that of people. So I think hiring managers or recruiters or whoever's involved should really focus on testing for what they need to test for, but not going so heavy-handed with it that you kind of put people off.
Yeah, really good points. And I think even if the experience itself is fantastic, if there's 10 stages to that fantastic experience, it's not gonna work, is it? And I think that comes back to, I suppose, at the beginning. And hiring managers sometimes think this is normal, depending on where they come from. If you work in investment banks, you can often expect to go through anything between 5 to 8 stages. It just works like that. So that's the norm. But I think TA need to, I suppose, push back at the beginning when we're doing those briefings and qualifications to make sure that the longer the process, the less of an experience it is. And actually, I also saw some data around it becomes less of an inclusive experience for particularly for females who perhaps maybe have other commitments as well. The more pro stages they can't attend. So absolutely with you on that. Carmen, any negative experiences your end?
Yeah, definitely. I think I feel like quite like Nuria, in the sense that I've been through, from uni jobs, like part-time jobs, to, when you actually apply for your first job after uni. It's unbelievable how I think it has changed now, because in the past 3 to 4 years, the market is more candidate driven, but a lot of initial stage interviews where I didn't hear back from the company. So I was like, should I wait? Should I apply for another job? And I think the worst experience I had was actually for a graduate job, for it's a huge company, and you would think that if it's a huge company, they have a TA team that's 10 people, they do take care of this kind of things, but they didn't. So typical graduate role where you have to do the CV and then your video presentation and then a task, and I went to the task stage and I did not hear from them, and that was and again that wasn't me as well. I'm being not experienced enough. Just do not put all your eggs in one basket, apply for more jobs. But that was literally my dream job back in the day. So it was a summer internship, but it was 3 months, which I knew that was going to help me with my career so much, and it just focused so much on that specific job, on that specific recruitment process. The amount of prep that I did as well was very, was a lot, and I was managing uni and a part-time job as well, and not hearing from them, it was just not okay. So I always I became a TA as well, because I really want to give people the best experience that I can. Clearly, as Nuria said, we all make mistakes, I'm pretty sure I did, let candidates down, potentially, but at the same time, I always do my best. And I think it's so important, especially giving actionable feedback. It's something that they can use in the next, in the next interviews they're going to have with other companies, because I feel a lot of the time, especially if you're not used to interviews, you do things that, if you're a talent acquisition, person, you don't do this in an interview. This is just a red flag. But if you're not used to interview, you can have, all the right skills. You can be an amazing person, but if you do not show that to the interviewer, it's not just gonna work for you. You have to show it. So I always try to give actionable feedback that they can, all candidates can use in the next interviews that they have with other companies.
Yeah, 100%. And we've actually got a question that's come through from a friend of Talent and Growth, certainly Laurie. So I'll just pop that on the screen. It's a great question. Interested to get our views on this. So Carmen, I'll stay with you for this. When do you think candidate experience actually finishes? Because as Laurie rightly points out, it kind of continues once the candidate's been hired. But where do we draw the line, I suppose, from a TA point of view?
I think for me, I think it's because I've always worked in startups. There's a very blurred line in between talent acquisition and people and HR. I think that for me, onboarding is still candidate experience. The onboarding process has to be very, very clear from the beginning before the candidates join, the new joiner joins, so that they know exactly what their first week, first month is going to look like, set expectations with them. And then we always ask feedback as well a month afterwards. How was the onboarding experience? And then I would say from, after the first month, then it would be more people and HR. But I would say the first month of a new joiner, to me, still a candidate experience.
And do you have a check-in point with them, Bucci? Is that part
Correct.
of the formal process? Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So we do the onboarding process. The onboarding normally depends on the role, but it lasts 1 to 2 weeks, and then after a month we do the check-in on how they're doing. Just trying to understand as well if the role that they were expecting is actually what it is on a day-to-day, and then feedback as well on the onboarding. I think onboarding is such an important part of an employee journey, because it really sets the tone for potentially the future at your company. The onboarding that we follow, I think it's really, really good, because we give all the new joiners the chance to meet all the different departments in the company, so they have a more holistic understanding of how the company works. but then again, just like gather feedback, because if you work in I don't know, if you're an engineer, maybe you don't really need to know a lot of the commercial side of things. So just gather feedback and try to tailor the onboarding, for those specific roles.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and for me, as an embedded partner, so one of the things I do with one of my clients is, after 1 month, we absolutely do a check-in. I'm not involved in the onboarding itself, but I do a check-in at the end of month 1 to see if the job is what they thought it was going to be. And did they enjoy the onboarding process? What could they change? That kind of thing. And for me, well, obviously it's different because I'm not working directly with the business, but for me, I think that's useful because I'm separated from the business a little bit. I might be able to get more honest feedback than perhaps if I was in the company. I found that anyway. But Lauren, what about you? What do you think to that in terms of the when does the candidate experience finish?
So I've got a slightly different take on this. So completely agree that onboarding still 100% part of that candidate experience, and I think the same rules apply. Transparency, information, signposting. Can they, understand why they're being asked to supply certain information? Do they know why you need that, when they need it by, how easy is it for them to submit, get their kit, all that kind of stuff. But maybe more from a kind of HR point of view, the second that candidate is employed by the business, i.e. day 1 start date, I would say it then switches to employee experience, which is still, of course, important. But from that point onward, I think that's when the candidate experience ends and the employee experience starts. However, 100%, they should have a first week schedule. They should have opportunities to give feedback. They should, be checked in with to see, was the job what you thought it was like, and all that good stuff. So just slightly different cut-offs, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nuri, what do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. I think, also depending on the business, I had the business where I was in charge of onboarding myself, so I will consider it like candidate. But employee, obviously, the moment they sign it, it's on your HIRS. I will consider it employee experience that has to be as good as and for me, it's just like part of the same process, because I've seen it in the past as someone joining on a Monday and leaving on a Friday, just leaving their badge and their laptop because the onboarding was terrible. And for me, it's just like, I'm always like super involved with this process but there's also like my legitimacy as a TA. Like you're also like a sales, even if you're in-house, you're part of like a sales, you're asking someone to leave their current job with the promise with something better. And not only the salary, and then it's just so crucial. The first weeks, especially, you think everyone feels so fragile. The moment you're like, you put your resignation, and like even if you have a contract signed that it can mean anything, and then you're joining, and then you just feel like so alone. So for me, as I said, like everyone in the business have to get involved. Everyone is an ambassador, and if you see a new joiner, that you just have to go and stop and say hi and introduce yourself. That's everyone's responsibility, and not only also like HR, because I mean we see them, especially I see them a lot at the beginning, and then like off you go. But there's like so many questions that they have that I just cannot answer. That's like my colleagues in HR ops that usually have these kind of answers. But so yeah, you can call it whatever you want, but it's crucial that for me, maybe, and then I keep that also from like my agency days up until even like the past probation period. I just don't close the job in my mind, because if that is that those 3 months are key, and then that means that for me, I will have to replace, and you have to replace, because we renew, or this person decides to leave, or we decide to like cut off with this person, then that means like we have a recruitment problem, because I'm not going to do the same mistake twice. So yeah, I will say until the probation period is approved and passed, I say like, okay, now it's fine.
You've had it drilled into you on the agency side, those dropouts and those clawbacks. There's nothing worse, is there? So no, I get it. I absolutely get it. Okay, so Nuri, staying with you actually. How do we? There's a balance here, because how do we balance being inclusive and fair? So that could mean sticking to a matrix in terms of interview questions or whatever, but while still delivering a human experience for the candidate, which actually may also need to be adaptable depending on the person's needs. How do we get that right?
It's a tricky one, especially now I'm doing a lot of like tech roles where, like there's not a lot of diversity. There's not a lot. So, I'm going to say it's complicated. So sometimes it's not that you want to push the agenda, but you have to, because otherwise it's just very difficult to put like, like diverse shortlist. So I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I just search for like female or like just like different backgrounds, because when you see the same kind of people just going like for the applications and stuff, so you have to push the agenda on the other side. And for me, as we've been mentioning, it's transparency, because we want to stick to a timeline. And then just last week I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this and that, don't worry, you'll hear back from me. And then Harry was like, oh, but I'm off 2 weeks. I was like, why you didn't tell me when we did the briefing? I specifically asked you. So I had to go around and all the candidates like, I know I told you this, but actually, you know, we have to put interviews on hold for 2 weeks. So I try to ask them also, like, you know, like, these are 2 ways. So if you have other interviews, if there's something I can do, I will try to push for another meeting. If you have to accept another offer, I totally, you know, like I always say, the manager, like, there's a risk that we're taking here. If there's nothing else that we can do in the meantime. So finding a right balance, especially, you know, like there's some weeks everything goes well and everyone is available. And then, I don't know, like there's always like maybe like September, because everyone is coming back sort of like at the end of the year. And then now I was finding, I think I did like 6 or 7 offers in like in 5 weeks. It's like, it's great. I was like, no one is going away because everyone has just come back. And now it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm off. No, me too. Then I'm off now, me. So it's just like, you have these metrics and everything is so beautiful. And then at the end of the day, you just have to adapt and yeah, just try to do like your best to maintain these timelines that you try to give. But at least you keep the candidates posted with everything that is happening. Every Friday I try to make an effort. I was like, okay, where we are, or like, what have I said, like, have I collected feedback? This person has been like, what happened this week? And I try to make just a round table of like everyone standing by on the interviews, and at least being like, hey, how you felt, how it was going, and like ask for feedback and just give an update on Fridays.
Yeah, I think it's a nice, easy, useful rule. Just at the end of the week, just look back at all the candidates who have been involved in any kind of process and just check in, even if there's nothing to say. Just check in. I think that's a good thing. And Lauren, what do you think around, I suppose, getting this balance right between being inclusive and fair, but also being human as well?
Yeah, I think on the inclusive side, so for me, that's about removing barriers and also asking questions so that you can make sure your process caters to all kind of different types of people and their needs. So that's everything from the language in your job advert to your recruitment process to even the job itself. You know, can we do it remotely? Can it be flexible hours? All that kind of stuff. And that hopefully allows you to make sure that whatever role it is, it's more inclusive. In terms of keeping it fair, so I think that it's important for people to work out, what are you testing for? So if we take, let's say, software engineer, for example, something I think we're all kind of working with a lot just now. One of the main things you're going to want to test for is technical ability. But the way that you test for that can still be done in different ways, whilst keeping that core skill, something that's focused and something that's fair for all your candidates. So, you know, one engineer might prefer to do the technical test as a bit of pair programming, whereas another engineer might want to do it as, you know, a standalone technical challenge that they then do and, you know, themselves and submit after. If you look at maybe a softer skill like, you know, customer service, you might have one candidate who wants to role play that, and that's how they're going to perform best on that asset. Or you might have another candidate that says, you know, give it to me as a case study and let me go away and write it down. So I think that to keep it fair, you can absolutely test for the same thing, but maybe personalize how you bring that out in different people.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Carmen, so, you know, we want to treat everybody the same. As we're talking about, you know, different people respond well to different experiences. You know, if you go back to what I was, my example of giving people a bad experience back in the day, I was constantly giving everyone the same experience and seeing who held up, and that, you know, that's not really a sustainable model or a fair one. But so Carmen, question to you: so how do we remain consistent yet adaptable?
I think it's really important to, again, like, set expectations. That is crucial for me. To set an expectation with the candidates of what the job is, because I do agree that we can be, you know, flexible and like adaptable, but at the same time, we have to be like realistic with what, you know, the culture in the workplace where you work is. I think, like, you know, if you work in a place where, you know, you can work like remotely, or you have, you know, like flexibility in terms of hours, that's great. But if not, I wouldn't use that to, you know, like, I wouldn't use that like in when I talk to the candidates, just because, you know, I can be flexible in the recruitment process, but then, you know, if we decide to hire them, they come in and if that's not the reality, it's just like a waste of time, from like for everyone. So I think, yes, absolutely, just like, try to be flexible, but at the same time, just set expectations, because I do believe that, like not everyone can work in, every company. There are like some companies that, attract people with like different lifestyles. And I think it's just like you have to be like very, very, straightforward with what the company culture is, what the reality is. So yes, make the process adaptable, but to an extent, because again, if they do not perform to, with that company, that specific company culture, I just don't think that's fair for the candidates, but even for like the hiring managers who, potentially are interviewing a lot of people that we do know that they're not going to be a fit for that specific company.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And Lauren, there's obviously a degree of anxiety around interviewing, and great people can be great at their jobs, but not necessarily great at interviews, and vice versa, absolutely vice versa. So how do we give all our candidates the platform to be the best and most authentic version of themselves? And also, I suppose, as a follow-on question to that is what's the role of TA in that, and what's the role of the hiring manager?
Okay, good question. So around the anxiety and kind of removing that for people. So 2 things. Firstly, give them as much information as physically possible. Who are they interviewing with? What are these people's job titles? Is it going to be Zoom or Teams? The number of times I've had people really frazzled before an interview because they thought it was Zoom. It turned out it was Teams. They hadn't got that installed. They didn't know how to work it. Just these really small things can set people off on the wrong foot. So I think make sure that TA, hopefully, are supplying that as much as possible. I think that feeds into the hiring manager side around, so what's the format going to be? TA should hopefully agree that with the hiring manager up front, and then communicate that out to the candidate so that everyone knows what they're there to cover, and there's ideally no surprises. The second thing for me is allowing your candidate to voice any questions or concerns all the way through the process, and give them space to maybe say, actually, can an adjustment be made to that? I'm not the sort of person that, is comfortable doing this type of test or this situation. Are there any other options there for me? And I think sometimes if you don't invite that from your candidate, they just won't ask because they're scared that, it'll go against them or it's not possible. So certainly something that we're looking at is building that into, the very initial application stages. Is there anything that we can do to make this process better for you as you go through the recruitment, or in fact, if you get the job? So those would be my 2 points.
Great points. Nuria, anything? What do you think around that?
Yeah, I think our role is mostly, especially now I'm thinking just when you just meet a candidate at the beginning, let's say for like the pre-screen or intro call, what I find like very anxious or nervous candidates, I'm like, completely, I'm your mate here. I need to get to know you. Like, you have to chill out, because then if you don't give me anything, I won't be able to put you in front of the hiring manager. So I think it's important for candidates, they need to understand who their audience are. So when you're speaking to HR, you can allow yourself for certain questions around, like holidays or like benefits and stuff like that you doesn't ask the hiring managers. On the other way around, sometimes they want to prove that they have really prepared the interview, and they start asking me tons of very technical questions, or which team they're going to be, or which like projects are going to work. I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes I know, I have more details because the manager shares. So for candidates to really understand the person they're like talking to, that's important. Which kind of questions you can do, and how like relaxed you can be. But for me, my role is to coach them. So I'll be like, we can be chill now. And then at the end of our call, I'll be like, listen, for the next steps, like maybe you were too laid back, or or you were too stressed. That's not going to get you anywhere. So I'm going to be like, you're going to be meeting this, and that. So that's how you should approach your next meetings, just to like set them on a path for success. Then it's completely up to them. But I had it in a previous business that I worked. We could actually literally give them like the answers, because it was very star driven, the question. So it was politics of the company. So they said, like, you can actually give them the answers, like not the answers, the questions, so they can prepare them, because we all know that behavioral questions can be very tricky and you can take. So although, sometimes obviously that will change from hiring manager, I'll be like, like, look at this. We'll share articles with them about like how to like well respond. So we actually gave them all the tools. If at the end of the day we thought that the examples or the way they presented themselves was not at the level they were expected, then but at least we gave them all the tools that they needed to succeed our interviews. So that was no secret. I think there's a lot of like interview guys for like a lot of business do this kind of stuff, so they really provide materials. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, candidates need to like prepare. I think there's a lot of business make a lot of effort in terms of employer brand to like give all of this information so they can actually go prepare. And then candidates is it's easier to say, obviously, than to do. But if you're nervous and you don't say anything, how people are going to get to know you? So you have to talk also, because I speak to a lot of candidates are like, yes, no answer. I'm like, you have to give me something. Sometimes I'm like, just, you have to give me something, because otherwise you're just going to get a rejection email in 24 hours. So, like it's the two ways, but for me, it's just really coaching and being very like, I am your partner here also in this. I want you to get the job, because that means it's less work for me, like, you know what I mean? So it's all like, I'm here like to be, like their partner and to help them through this. I'm not their enemy at all. But hiring managers, obviously, that they have a completely different role and they have to evaluate the skills. So they can be a little bit not harsh, but yeah, way more driven in terms of like the answers that they need.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice word, the coaching side. I think you're coaching the candidates through the process, and you are, you're part of the business, but you are impartial because you haven't got the need yourself. You've not got the pain point of not having that person in the business. So of course the hiring manager may be a bit more severe, but you can, or severe is the wrong word, but a bit more, a bit of a tougher interview. But you can coach them through it. So I like that. Lauren, what is the most essential thing that you or your business, perhaps now or in the past, have done to improve candidate experience? What's the thing that stands out to you?
For me, it's a mindset shift, and I think this is something a lot of businesses have had to do in the last couple of years. So when I first started in recruitment 10 plus years ago, there was hundreds of candidates, right? You would bang out a job advert, you'd have 40 candidates overnight, and it was pretty easy to fill most roles. These days, polar opposite, candidates are scarce, skill set shortages across quite a lot of sectors. The businesses have now had to, thankfully, really start treating their candidates with more respect, honest communication, regular updates. Their time and their skills are precious, and they deserve that level of kind of stakeholder engagement. So I think that's really key. And once you get into that mindset, it's much easier for your whole business to adapt their processes, to adapt how they speak to these people, to balance the conversation much more and realize that, we need them as much as they might be interested in us. It is not a given that this person, will jump at a job offer and is desperate for work at your company. And that shift makes a difference.
Yeah, the mindset shift, easy for me to say, mindset shift, really important. I think for me, a red flag for a company would be if the company still has, at least externally, the attitude that the candidate is lucky to join them. And that is not going to fly now. And I think, you're right. 10 years ago, you put out an advert for anything, you could probably do all right. You do okay. These days, you can write some great content and great copy to get people drawn in. But as we all know, most of the people we're getting into our companies are probably coming from outreaches from our part. So I think the key, I suppose, in terms of that mindset shift for me has been certainly just displaying the data around how difficult it is to find these people, how few React developers with TypeScript and everything else they need in the area that they want them to be with that many years experience. So I think that's really, really important. Carmen, what do you think? What's one of the things that stands out to you that you've done really well to improve the candidate experience?
Yeah, to me, it's two main things that we've done. The first one, when I started working at Atom, we had for like a couple of roles, so the recruitment process was quite lengthy. So to me, just like, giving, 5 tasks to someone, it's just like, it's not like, that is not good candidate experience, because you have to consider that, they're not just applying for your job, they're applying for other jobs as well. And plus they have to do, their day job, they have a family, a private life. So shorten the recruitment process. I think that's what we've done really well. At the same time, in that recruitment process, you still have to gather all the information that you need in order to make at final decision, but like just like shorten it and just like make it like smarter. That really helped. And then another thing, that's kind of like in terms of feedback. I don't know if this has happened to you guys in the past, but what I normally found like in the past is that when a hiring manager wanted to reject someone, they wouldn't give me any feedback. I was just like, no cultural fit. Like that is not good enough for me. Most of the times, like talent acquisition people, we are not in the actual interviews, so we don't know what went wrong. And I do not want to give very vague feedback to candidates. We had someone stronger than you. What does that mean? How can this person use it? So in the scorecards that now the hiring managers need to fill after the interview, there is one, like the last bit, there is like a feedback to give to the candidate, so that I do not have to filter. Like they have to, the hiring managers need to own that bit, and they need to give me, the specific reasons, like XYZ, why this person was not the right fit for that role. And I found it very, I think that's really, really useful for hiring managers as well, to actually put into write why that person was not the right fit, because it kind of like it makes you think of what are the key things that you're looking for in a candidate, and why that person was not good enough. And even for me, when I go and approach other candidates, or I have that initial conversation, I can test the candidate towards those specific things that the hiring manager is looking for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing your business is doing there. And I think it's, how many times have we had a message from a hiring manager saying it's a no for me, I'll provide feedback later, and you never get that feedback. So you're just kind of, what do I say here? So I suppose, Carmen, the next question on that then, how did you get, so it sounds like a great process. How did you get the buy-in from, or where did that come from? How did you get the buy-in from the hiring managers in the business on that? Because it has to be enforced, doesn't it?
Yes and no, in the sense that I think that like at Atom, we are a very talent-driven company. And we know that in order to get the best talent, you have to give the best experience. So just trying to like approach the hiring manager in the sense that this is not just hiring someone, this is employer branding as well. Is going to say, like the candidates that they're great and they approach you is gonna like, they're gonna save so much time, from me approaching maybe like the wrong candidates. So having that very, very strong employer branding, that's something that like the hiring manager understood. And then the other thing is talent pool. In the sense that if someone is not right for that specific job, that doesn't mean that they're not the right fit for the company. It's just, that specific job was not, the right fit for them. But it's really important. Like, it did happen in the past where we've interviewed someone, for a job. They were not the right fit for that role. We were like very open about, the reasoning, the feedback. And then they would, another job comes out, either I would approach them or they would approach me directly, because, they had such a great experience. And it's so important. We made a few hires because of that. And I think, like hiring managers, they really appreciate, the cultural fit as well. Like, it's super important, especially if you work in a startup. So having, just making them realize how important is to treat candidates fairly. And again, that this impact is going to impact our employer branding as well. I think that was what made like hiring managers realize. I think like most of them, they were like good from the beginning. So I think that was quite lucky. But I think it was especially with like in a small company, you have like a lot of first-time managers. They've never done this. They don't know what good looks like. And I think it's really good to have these kind of people, because you can using what Nuria said, but like you can coach them on what good looks like, rather than maybe having a hiring manager that has worked for, I don't know, the past 15 years in a corporate, and they do not care. I think you have to be good in like showing them what what good candidate experience can bring to the business. But at the same time, I do feel that, sometimes you have to be lucky, because I did work with hiring managers in the previous businesses that were like very corporate, like it's a no. You would ask them why, and they would just not reply. So I think it's a balance of, like being in a lucky position, I guess. And then, giving them the motivation to believe in candidate experience.
Perfect. Thanks, Carmen. And Nuria, anything to add on coaching the hiring managers?
Well, I mean, as I think there's nothing new. I think we mentioned it last time we spoke, that I deliver, I think, mostly in like every business I work, like interview training for hiring managers, that will go from like making them aware that the bias that they might have, because we all do, like how to structure, like covering the basics with how to structure the interview, just how to welcome a candidate. If it's a video, is an office interview, like making also like an intro about them. And just making sure that this interviews obviously is about like getting a lot from the candidate, but it's also about selling the job, the project. A candidate is mostly, apart from all the beautiful employer brand and like offsites and company barbecues that we have, at the end of the day, a candidate is more likely to take a job because they want to work with a specific hiring manager, because that person will bring a lot to their career or the project that they're going to get involved. So they have to make sure that they sell that. So because that's going to what is going to play a key of like this person accepting the role or not, apart from like the beautiful benefits and all of that. As Carmen said, when I've been in startup for a long time, so a lot of people become managers, they like very quickly, or they're quite young, or they're just only being on the other end. So it's good to just make a little, for most of the people it comes quite instantly, because we all been on the candidate side. So it's a nice, like making a bit of like interview training is a nice reminder, like good practice. And obviously ensuring that they don't do like like forbidden questions and like very inappropriate questions and stuff like that. But and just making them also aware of the bias, because if you have a bias, then you try to challenge it, and then you try to involve maybe someone else who won't have this kind of bias. So that will be my bit for the hiring managers to improve their employee experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think inappropriate questions. I could do an episode on that. I think maybe I will, on the most inappropriate questions I've heard hiring managers ask, particularly in my agency days. But I won't do that today. Software. So, Lauren, which software are we using to manage candidate experience? And I'm knee deep in all things AI right now. I mean, I'm looking at ChatGPT. I'm looking at all the sort of things out there which can make my life easier, make my life better, and deliver a better service to our clients and our candidates overall. But what in particular are you using to manage candidate experience, and how do we get the most out of it?
I'm definitely going to take other people's guidance on this one, right? So used lots of softwares, lots of different ATSs, lots of different ways to communicate and manage candidates, and I am still looking for one that I think is magical. So I probably would rather hear from other people if you get any recommendations, because I've definitely not found one yet that I think ticks all the boxes.
No problem. Carmen?
Yeah, we hopefully I'm not going to we use an ATS, and now we are switching to another ATS. There are like different reasons why we decided to go with the second one. But what we're trying to achieve with the second ATS that we're going with is sending the surveys to candidates after 1 week after either they've been rejected or they have been offered the role. And I think it's really, really important to understand what went wrong and what went right as well. From a candidate's perspective, we use like surveys in a business that I used to work with, I think like a couple of years ago, and it was very, very interesting because it was a specific hiring manager that was really, really hard to hire for them. And then after we started sending all the surveys, we realized that actually, again, there is no hard hire, but they were not treating the candidates fairly, and the candidates wouldn't tell us. When you reject someone or when you offer someone the role, they do not give you feedback. It's not something that the candidate does it. But even if you ask them on an email, if they just do not feel I think confident enough in doing it. but just like sending like an anonymous feedback, like feedback form, like survey form, that really help us extrapolate the data and understand what was not working with that specific hiring manager. We went back to the hiring manager, said, this is what is not working. In order for for us to help you hire, you need to change XYZ. Not an easy conversation, but then I think 2 weeks after we shared the feedback, we made a hire. So it's really, really important that the hiring manager, again, we cannot be there, HR TA cannot be there all the time, and candidates need to, we have to kind of like create that like psychological safety with the candidates for them in order to be okay to share feedback with us. So again, with the ATS, it's not, we're like in the implementation phase. I'll share more detail with you, Lauren, later. But yeah, what we really are trying to achieve is to gather candidates' feedback, like with the surveys, and see what we can improve in our hiring process.
Yeah, I think that the feedback surveys are really important, and I've actually been, so actually in terms of an ATS, I found it a little bit tricky because I know if anyone's an expert on Workable, then let me know. But I tried to set up surveys to come out on Workable, but it seems that I couldn't set it up per stage. It seemed to just go, I don't know if I'm an idiot with it or something, but it looked like anyone who applied to the job was getting as soon as they sent their CV, they got an email saying, how was the interview process? And I was like, no, that's not happened. So if anyone knows about how I can fix that, then let me know offline. But one thing I've done, and this is really, I suppose, is a value add for our clients to show that we're doing our part in delivering a good experience to candidates, is I book, as you all three of you know, I use Calendly to book all my meetings. So I always send it out to candidates to book the first stage interview. You then could set up workflows in Calendly, and I've put together a Typeform survey, which then sends everyone who's had a meeting with me on Calendly, gets a Typeform survey an hour after, say, did you feel you got to be the best version of yourself? Was it an inclusive call? That kind of thing. And so I've bodged a few things together there, but it works well for what I'm trying to do. But does anyone off the top of the head know what I've done wrong with Workable there? Because I'd love to hear it.
No, I mean, I do use Workable every day and I still can't help you with that. One thing that I will add, and this maybe doesn't always sit with ATSs, I've had very few ATSs that facilitate this, but in terms of using tech, one thing that I have found makes a massive difference is giving the candidates the ability to subscribe for job alerts. So you do all your, your great content, your employer branding, all the, they finally get to the careers page, and then you look at the open vacancies and there isn't something that matches their skill set. For me, being able to capture that candidate's interest at that point instead of just losing them back into the void, and giving them the option to subscribe for future job alerts, so that when something does go live, they get an instant alert saying, there's now a software engineering role available at this company. You were obviously keen before. That makes a massive difference in terms of keeping those candidates engaged and kind of banking them down for future. So sorry, no idea about the surveys, Paul, but I'll give you that.
No, that's a great point. So sorry, how do you get that out? Sorry, how do you get that out?
So you can some ATSs will allow you to embed that on your careers page, and then you can set it up so that an automatic email then goes out when a new job that fits that, let's say, department, goes live. It'll allow you to access those candidates. Or the other way, if your ATS doesn't allow you to do it, is you'll have to create basically like a form submission that's managed maybe through your CRM or some sort of spreadsheet if you're going back that far. And then that allows you to, again, filter by candidate and send a push notification out when a job that fits that specialism goes live.
Gotcha. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. Nuria, anything to add on software at all?
I've used Workable. I've used now I've done the transition from Greenhouse to Teamtailor, so I've used many, and then also from HARS that also very nice, that also help improve that. I mean, obviously we can use at the end of the day is how we use the ATS, and the same setting up surveys or all the messages cool. I think now Teamtailor allows me to send SMS directly from, so I have I can send emails, I can send, so I mean, as long as I think they're improving quite a lot. I remember back in the days from using Workday to then Workable, which was a game changer, and everyone, I think there's a lot of it's always one is the fashionable going around. Now I took Teamtailor also. It's fun for me to get to know. So I like it. It has nice color, and you can work on the career website, and you feel very autonomous and empowered as a TA. So, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's how you use it and how you decide to communicate and how use it the best ways possible. But yeah, I think there's so much that we can do, and that we don't manage to even like find out everything. Like as you said, like just setting out like for sometimes I found it so frustrating, like do what I ask you, for God's sake. So but yeah, I think I keep in touch. I mean, my way is always like keeping in touch with when I have like random needs, and I'm like, oh, is this work? Because I think all of them are quite adaptable, and if a few of us not complain but suggest something, I think they can make like changes very fast. So I think keeping a good relationship with your account manager, I try to make, especially now I have, because I'm just doing it now, but when I have a few ideas, I try to have a call so I can escalate like some stuff that I would like to have then in an ideal work. And for example, in Team Taylor, they say they work in sprints of 6 weeks. So if that falls into that sprint, then it will be available on the release, and then this button will be, and then they send you also like notifications on when the new stuff is coming up live. So that's a good thing. And also I know Workable is it works quite a lot like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, look, I think I'm conscious of our time here, so we're just coming up to the top of the hour. So I think I'll just finish off with one quick question for everybody, and it's my one thing question, which I like to ask people at the end of interviews. So my question to the panel will be, if you could give other TA teams one piece of advice on how to improve their candidate experience, something that's really important to you, what would that be? And I'm going to pick on Carmen. Let's start with you.
That's a good question. I know that this is going to sound like lame, but like treat every candidate as you wish to be treated. Just like remember what it meant to apply for a ridiculous amount of jobs and not hearing from them, or just like being left in the middle of the recruitment process without, like you're rejected, you don't know what went wrong, you don't know what went right. I think literally just like give candidates, like the respect that they deserve. I do understand that, we work in very busy businesses, and it's not possible to give, like every single candidate that they apply, like a great feedback. I understand that. But, back from what I think Nuria or Lauren said, if they had the time to prep for an interview with us, especially with the hiring manager, where they actually, had to prep, we have the time to, to give them feedback. That would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, empathy. Think about what it was like when you were applying to jobs, what it was like when you didn't hear back. Absolutely. And I think it's easy to forget that when you're dealing with so many candidates all the time. It does become, there is an element of it becomes numbers of people. But remember, these are human beings behind these resumes. Absolutely. Love it, Carmen. Thank you. Lauren, what about you?
I'm going to give everyone a top tip. So going back to that piece that we're saying, when a hiring manager comes back and says it's a no from me and that's as good as feedback as you're going to get, I sometimes have written back to them, cool, no worries, please let the candidate know. And then obviously they get a fright, because the last thing they want to do is have to deal with that part of the candidate comms. But it forces them to be like, okay, right, she's right, I can't just give her that amount of feedback. So one of two things happens. Either they say, right, okay, right, here's the full feedback, and they give you enough to actually be able to go back in a meaningful way and give feedback, or they realise, okay, I'm going to have to phone or email this candidate, and I can't just write it's a no. And again, it forces them to start thinking about what are the reasons for that no, and how to parcel that up in a constructive way. So that sometimes works.
Love it. Top tip. Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. And Nuria, finally from you.
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I think it's good, as we've been saying, we deal with a lot of candidates, and yeah, at some point it just becomes also a number, and it's overwhelming even for us. So I think, just going around doing last rounds on Friday, just making sure that everyone receives a message. And I'm the first one that if I treat people like humans, and I'm a human myself, so sometimes like, so sorry, miss, so sorry, I promise you, like I said I was gonna do something and I didn't. So sorry, still waiting for an update. Like if you haven't heard from me, it's just, but I'm here. If you have any questions, just don't, I haven't forgot you, but there's nothing I can say to you now. And just being present and just making it look like, this is still happening, and ensuring that everyone receives just a quick update before the weekend. I know a lot of candidates come back to me like, well, this is not very good news before the weekend. I'm like, well, do you rather be wait? I mean, I try to be myself. I'm like, but sometimes I was like the last hours of Fridays, I'm like, well, I mean, it's bad hour. I have to call everyone. I just want to give feedback. And most of the time it's no, because I only have one vacancy and usually a lot of candidates for it. or like, do you want to spend all weekend just going around thinking that you might get the job, or you at least you want to know, and then like you can move on and keep applying the rest of the weekend. So I try to, obviously I'm biased from my own point of view. So yeah, my tip is, well, like, everyone deserves that. And even if we forget, and even if like sometimes obviously we make mistakes, at least just try to, even if it's too late, I try to always give like signs of life of what's going on.
So everybody must do their bad hour, no matter how bad it feels. Gotcha, with you. Thank you so much, speakers. It's been great. So everybody listening, tomorrow we've got a podcast dropping with Greg Savage, the godfather of agency recruitment. Next Monday, we've got a webinar on workforce planning. And I know that it's going to be a good one because I asked quite a few people if they would speak and they didn't know how to do it. So that means there must be an audience for that, an appetite for it. Following week after that, we've got one on what people really want, both in terms of retention and attraction. So stay locked into Talent and Grow. But Nuria, Carmen, and Lauren, thank you so much for today. I hope you have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye.